What is going on, guys and girls? Level Up here at OnPointTactical. Today we are looking at the AK-12 assault rifle. This is the beginning of a mission that I have. I'm going to go from top to bottom in all the different weapon classes, I guess you would say, and max out each one as far as the attachments. Unlock every attachment for each weapon in order, starting with the AK-12 and the assault rifles, moving down the assault rifles eventually onto carbines, LMGs, and things of that nature. But today, it is all about the AK-12. And if you're wondering why I sound funny, I have a head cold. If you've played Battlefield 4 at all, you'll know that the AK-12 is the first assault rifle that you unlock in the game. Something about its recoil pattern and just the way that it feels makes it most accurately described as a laser beam of death. And if we go to Simthic.com, we'll see that the AK-12's damage model is standard. Its muzzle velocity 600 meters a second, right in there with typical. Rounds a minute, 650 on auto and 750 rounds a minute on burst fire, which does mean that if you were to potentially tap fire it very well with burst fire, you could get this thing almost shooting 800 rounds a minute. Honestly, I haven't found where that's very much use trying to put this thing in burst and use it. I prefer to tap fire with something like the AK-12. But again, I think that's one of those things that's going to come down to personal preference. The recoil pattern is where this weapon really stands out though. 0.3 pull up, 0.15 pull left, and only 0.1 pull to the right. With a first shot recoil multiplier of 2.1, the angled grip is going to be the obvious choice on the AK-12, and it's really going to bring your recoil to a point where you almost don't need to compensate for it. If you just let it glide, you pretty much are going to wind up aiming for the head if you are aiming at the chest to start with, and I think that's pretty darn useful. The reload time is 2.05 seconds on a short reload and 3 seconds on a long reload. Again, nothing special, but it's definitely not a roadblock. So now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Level, that means that it would be terrible at close range, right? 650 rounds a minute, that shouldn't be enough to support any close quarter gameplay. And you would be correct, except that with that low recoil pattern, you actually don't miss very many shots in close range engagements. And this Operation Locker footage here, I think, is good evidence of that. And this sort of also brings up the fact that muzzle brakes are usually worth it. Even if the weapon is kind of inaccurate to start with, kind of the AEK comes up to mind. If its recoil is ridiculous, then that means you're not going to be landing your shots regardless. So, either way, you really are just going to kind of be stuck unless you can control that recoil and land your shots with recoil management. In the end of the day, I think that's why so many people use this AK-12, especially if they just picked up the game. I know exactly what happens. They pick up the AEK, or the AK-12, sorry. It's really easy to use, almost no recoil, then they unlock the SCAR, and that thing, it doesn't have ridiculous side-to-side recoil, but it kicks up kind of hard. So, you know, at this point, they probably don't have recoil management figured out in Battlefield 4, which means that they're not going to give the SCAR a chance because it kicks so hard. So then they're going to wind up sticking to that AK-12 and probably wind up never using the SCAR for a while because they just remember it being bad because they weren't good at the recoil management in Battlefield 4. I know that this is the scenario that plays out a lot, so for any of you newbies that got it for Christmas or are buying it just around now and or just even starting to play it if you've had it for a while, give the SCAR a chance, get used to recoil management, and it's definitely going to reward you in the long run. However, the AK-12, the more and more I use it, the more I'm impressed by it, and what I mean by that is that because I can control it so well, not that I can't control other weapons, but because it has so little recoil, I can pretty much just knock the pinhead off of a pin with it now, and that means that I wind up actually being able to do okay in pretty much any engagement distance. You know, it's kind of a skill versus luck type scenario. The ACWR takes a ton of recoil management skill and also some luck at the same time, but less luck than the AK-12 in close quarters. It's just kind of a different mentality behind all these different weapons, and I love the rock, paper, scissors mentality that DICE has taken at balancing weapons in Battlefield 4. The AK-12 is going to wind up being one of those guns that some of the tryhards are going to use, and I think that the primary reason for that is the fact that if you stick to it, you can pretty much pull off any engagement and not really have to worry about it. And I know what you're thinking, but it still shoots slow. Your damage per second is going to be in the tank, and if you are good at recoil management, there's no incentive to use the AK-12 over something like the 416 or the AEK. And you would be entirely correct. If you are good at recoil management in Battlefield 4, there is almost no reason to ever use the AK-12 ever again. But because it's my mission to max out all the different weapons, I'm going to have to breeze over it, and I'm going to have to breeze over the SAR-21, which is kind of the same scenario, but we will get around to that because it does have some interesting stats that come with it. But, you know, it's just kind of difficult to ever want to use the AK-12 if you can handle recoil. Especially if you can get the burst fire down with the AK-12, you shouldn't have to graduate from the AK-12. It's one of those guns that, like, with dedication, it can carry you to the end of the game, but if you don't dedicate to it, there's no reason to go back. It's going to be one of those things where if you learn it inside out, you get the recoil down, get the reload down in your head, and you know how much time you have, and just you can visualize being able to pull off that reload, you're going to be a lot better off. And it's the same kind of scenario with a lot of guns, but it's pretty easy to dedicate to the AK-12, but I am kind of tired of being killed by it because the darn thing appears all the time. I've had to deal with it now in the beta for 2 weeks, launch week for 2 weeks, well, launch month I guess for 2 weeks, and then now Christmas noobs for a couple weeks. So for like 6 weeks total, I've been killed by nothing but AK-12s, or at least a lot of AK-12s, and I'm kind of tired of seeing the darn thing, but I know why people use it, so I try not to get too irritated whenever I get killed by it. It's just because it's so laser beam, it's kind of aggravating whenever you run around the corner with an AEK and get beat out by the AK-12 in close quarters simply because the thing has almost no recoil. But sorry, but in all honesty, I would have rather seen the 7.62 version of the AK-12, and I'm sure that a lot of people agree with me. That way we kind of had the AK-12 and the Scar H in the same world. I don't like that the Scar H is the only assault rifle that does as much damage as it is, and if DICE, if DICE was to patch the AK-12 and make it the 7.62 variant of it, then we could have a potential monster on our hands with its reload time and whatnot. I seriously think that this is a direction that DICE should consider, but at the end of the day, we don't know what the devs are going to do. I'm LevelUp here at OnPointTactical. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been somewhat informative for you to either try or avoid the AK-12, and I hope to see you guys on the battlefield.